Mr. Miller brings his girlfriend, Ms. Troutman, to Judge Lauren's courtroom. He accuses her of having multiple two-week affairs right before she got pregnant with their child. He's now having doubts about the paternity of the child. Ms. Troutman didn't deny the claims. She said she cheated because Mr. Miller was neglecting his duties and responsibilities, and his mother was meddling too much in their affairs.
Mr. Miller, you claim Troutman left you for another man.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
say that when she returned and quickly resumed your sexual relationship.
Yes.
Shortly after she announced she was pregnant, claimed there's a distinct possibility that you're not the father of her newborn baby.
Nope.
Ms. Troutman said she wouldn't have stepped out of her relationship if Mr. Miller was taking proper care of her and her girls. She said it was his mother that stepped up and was taking care of them. She said she grew up with only her mother. Her father was deceased. She was the one that took care of her siblings, and she was tired of that life.
How did you end up in this situation?
Well, I wouldn't have been sleeping around with other men if he was doing his responsibility as a father and taking care of his girls and me also. He wasn't buying diapers, wipes, clothes. His mother was the man of our relationship. She took care of us.
Ms. Troutman said she started running away from home, and that was when she met Mrs. Sidney, Mr. Miller's mom. She took her in, gave her clothes, fed her, and put a roof over her head. She said she's always grateful to her. She said they were sitting outside one day when a car pulled up and Mr. Miller stepped out, her son. They hit it off immediately, and they had sex that same night.
So I started to run away from home. Well, when I ran away from home, I had met Tony's mother, Cindy. Clothes, roof over my head, food in my mouth. She was a mother that I never had before. I love her dearly, and I thank her dearly for doing that for me.
She got pregnant shortly after that. She said after they found out she was pregnant, everything was good. Their relationship with each other was okay. Mr. Miller said that he fell in love with Ms. Troutman after seeing her for the first time. The entire courtroom cheered.
Oh, you got to know each other just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
We clicked really good. We did click.
Yeah.
Okay, just one moment, ma'am. Continue.
And maybe prior to 2 to 3 weeks, that's when I was feeling a little bit nauseous, throwing up all the time.
Mr. Miller said that they have had one child together before this second one, that he had no doubts about the first child, only about the second child. He said he went out of town for a week. When he returned, he met another man holding his firstborn child. He asked who he was, and Ms. Troutman said he was her boyfriend.
And you had one child together.
We had one child together after being with her for a month. We
And
ended up
then you're on to number 2.
Yes, we have a second child, Deja.
And you have doubts about number 2.
I do have doubts.
Ms. Troutman interjected, saying that it was not true. She said what happened was that when Mr. Miller went away, they had broken up after an argument. They were no longer together. When Mr. Miller saw her with her friend, they were heading over to her mother's house for her child's birthday. She said Mr. Miller started apologizing and begging her to come back.
I'm with
Well,
him.
what happened, Ms. Troutman?
Well, what happened was when he had went away, we was broken up. We had got into an argument. We were no longer together when I was dating the person that I met at the Plasma Center. We were not together.
Ms. Troutman said she accepted his apology and went back to Mr. Miller that same night with his daughter. She said she was only with the other guy because she was lonely and needed some comfort. Mr. Miller said after one fight, just one fight, Ms. Troutman shot back saying it was not one fight.
I really want you
No,
back.
no,
Will
no.
you please come back home with me, trip or whatever with a friend? He didn't want to live here no more in Indy or whatever. And I was like, okay, you know, I felt for it. I told him that I'd come back home with his daughter.
Judge Lauren asked Ms. Troutman if she was with only one man during the time she was separated from Mr. Miller. Ms. Troutman said no, that was also with another guy. The entire courtroom, including Mr. Miller, shook their heads in disbelief. Ms. Troutman said the relationship with Mr. Miller has been so rough, and she got tired of it.
Ms. Troutman, you admit that during that time, you were intimate with another man.
Yes.
And during that time, were you intimate with anyone else?
No. Well, yes, I was when me and him, I'm sorry.
Really?
Yes, I
Get it
was. When
straight.
we got into it and we had broken up, yes, I was with that guy that I was with.
Ms. Troutman submitted a timeline of her relationship with the 3 men she had sexual relationship with before the birth of her second child. The timeline she presented shows that all 3 men could be the father. Ms. Troutman said she hoped that Mr. Miller would be the father. Mr. Miller said it was partly his fault after they engaged in a threesome. At this point, only the DNA result can put an end to this.
Mr. Miller,
Yes, Your Honor.
you are not her father.
Hey.
Patrice.
Patrice, baby, I love you, baby.
A woman, Mrs. Gamboa, drags her husband, Mr. Gamboa, to court to prove that he's the father of their 1-year-old son. Mr. Gamboa insists that he's not the father, that their babysitter is the father. Mrs. Gamboa said this development has led to the emotional neglect of their son.
Mrs. Gamboa, you say you're fed up with your husband because he's repeatedly accused you of cheating, even with the babysitter.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you're here today to set things straight because you say his doubt about paternity has led to the emotional neglect of your 1-year-old son, Dominic.
Mrs. Gamboa said the babysitter was on the bed when Mr. Gamboa came back, but she didn't cheat on him. Mr. Gamboa said he was at work when he got a call from his stepfather that the babysitter was in his room with his wife. The door was shut behind them. Mrs. Gamboa said the door wasn't shut. She said the stepfather doesn't like her.
So, Ms. Gamboa, did you cheat on your husband with the babysitter?
No, Your Honor. The babysitter was in the bed at the time that Mr. Gamboa came home, but I did not cheat on him.
Oh, wait a minute. The babysitter was in the bed?
Yes, on top of the bed.
Mr. Gamboa said he worked a graveyard shift all night and they had a 4-bedroom apartment, so the babysitter could have slept in the other rooms. He instead saw the babysitter sleeping on their bed. Mrs. Gamboa said that they've been together for so long that Mr. Gamboa should know that she would never cheat on him.
Mr. Gamboa knew he was in the room and he only slept on the floor. When he came home, I was not in the room when he came home. I was in the living room watching TV and he came home and our babysitter was sitting on the bed.
Mrs. Gamboa said the male babysitter was Mr. Gamboa's decision in the first place. She said the babysitter was a mutual friend of theirs whom Mr. Gamboa knew more than her. He was homeless at the time Mr. Gamboa offered him the job. She said she regretted the decision every day.
So you have a male babysitter,
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. However, Ms. Gamboa, I need you to elaborate a bit for the court. Why make that choice? Why is a male babysitter really in your room at all?
Mr. Gamboa says their son Dominic looks exactly like the babysitter. He says the babysitter walks like him and they have almost the same head structure. Mrs. Gamboa says the son looks like Mr. Gamboa, with the same dimples, and also identical birthmarks like his brother. Mr. Gamboa said he has been having infertility issues, that there's a high possibility he's not the father.
You think this child, Dominic, looks like the babysitter?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
Your Honor,
So-
Dominic looks just like his father. He has the same dimple as our other son. That he looks just like him, and then he walks like him.
Mrs. Gamboa said if that's the case, why didn't he deny the paternity of their first son? That if Mr. Gamboa didn't deny the paternity of their first child, he shouldn't deny that of Dominic. The entire courtroom clapped. Mr. Gamboa said the time they had their first child, they were all living together with Mrs. Gamboa X under one roof. Everyone gasped. He said that's why he's doubtful about the babysitter now.
Yes,
Receiving
Your
a
Honor. I was
child
told
with a
by
woman
the-
because
I was
of
told-
having-
He did not deny our first son and
was
only
told-
Dominic. If that was the case, he shouldn't deny our only Dominic and not our first son.
Well, Your Honor, when we conceived our first son, we were all living with her ex. We were all living in one house.
Mr. Gamboa said the doubts concerning the paternity of Dominic has caused him not to bond with the child. Mrs. Gamboa chipped in saying that Mr. Gamboa doesn't play with the child. He doesn't change his diaper. Mrs. Gamboa presented childhood pictures of Mr. Gamboa alongside that of Dominic, highlighting the striking resemblance between both of them.
How has this doubt affected your connection with Dominic, Mr. Gamboa?
I mean, there's...
Have you bonded with the child?
No, I haven't. I was a child.
A year-old, handsome young man.
He's mostly with his mom. He will not come to me. He cries. He throws a fit.
Your Honor, I brought him.
Mrs. Gamboa said she believed the babysitter was trying to destroy their marriage because after they kicked him out, he tried persuading Mr. Gamboa to leave her. The babysitter was also telling her to leave her husband. Mrs. Gamboa said her husband was there when she gave birth to Dominic. He left, saying he was going to get clothes. He didn't return till 2 days later.
Our babysitter, when we kicked him out, he had no place to go. He went to Mr. Gamboa, oh, you should leave her and let's get a house together. And then he would come to me behind his back and be like, oh, let's leave him. He's no good for you.
He was snapping photos
We should get a house together.
Mr. Gamboa said he had business he had to take care of. He said when he left the hospital, he started having doubts. Mrs. Gamboa said her husband wasn't at work, that he never wanted anything to do with the baby. He didn't agree to take pictures with the newborn baby. Mr. Gamboa says if Dominic is not his son, He's ending the marriage. Only the DNA results can solve this mess now.
That Mr. Gamboa, you are his father.
Thank you. That's your baby. Bond with him.
Mother and daughter, Ms. Palmer and Ms. Robinson, appear in Judge Lauren's courtroom alongside Mr. Rollins, an old fling of Ms. Palmer whom Ms. Robinson is convinced that he is her biological father. Mr. Rollins claims that Ms. Palmer was involved with multiple men at the time, and that he is certain he is not the father of Ms. Robinson.
Ms. Robinson, you and your mother have opened your case today in hopes of giving you closure.
Yes.
You say you've always known the defendant was your father and his denial has crushed you. Once you prove that he is your dad, you hope he will finally accept you. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Robinson, with tears in her eyes, said that for 24 years she has had to deal with the constant denial by Mr. Rollins that he is not her father. Ms. Palmer said she has only told her daughter that Mr. Rollins was her biological father. She hasn't mentioned anyone else, and that she has never gotten any acknowledgement from Mr. Rollins concerning her daughter.
So, Ms. Robinson, explain, how has the feeling of denial affected you?
Your Honor, it affected me real bad. Like, I feel like that he wasn't responsible to even say I'm his daughter or not.
And so for 24 years, you've had to deal with this.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Rollins says that he is 1,001% sure that he is not the biological father of Ms. Robinson. Ms. Robinson said her first encounter with Mr. Rollins happened when she was 9 years old. She came back from school and saw him talking with her mother on their front porch. She asked her mother who he was, and she told her it was her father.
You say you're 1,000% sure.
1001.
So, Ms. Robinson, as you grew up, were you told his name?
As I knew him as Doobie.
But you knew his name?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have an occasion to visit Mr. Rollins, Ms. Robinson, or did you run into him?
When I was 9.
She ran after him and saw him next door moving some furniture. She asked him if he was her father. He replied that he wasn't. The judge asked her how the encounter made her feel. She said it made her feel sad, that Mr. Rollins could have owned up to the fact that he slept with her mother and there was every possibility he could be her father. Mr. Rollins says he remembers the encounter.
So, Your Honor, I ran down the stairs. He was in the apartment next to ours putting in furniture. I was like, well, is Doobie here? And they was like, he came out, he was like, well, this mean? So I asked him, I was like, well, are you my father? He was like, no, I'm not your father. I was like, well, my mom telling me you are my father. He was like, well, no, I'm not your father.
Mr. Rollins said that he has had this conversation with Ms. Palmer before, that there were no resemblance between him and Ms. Robinson. Ms. Palmer interrupted him, saying that it's not compulsory for there to be a resemblance, that not every child resembles their parents. Mr. Rollins said he doesn't remember a child asking him that question. Ms. Robinson said that's her problem with Mr. Rollins. He doesn't own up to anything.
She was just kind of observing me. When I was looking at her, and I said to myself, and I also said to Ms. Palmer that we had no resemblance. Why would you keep engaged?
She have to have resemblance of you for to be your child?
Mr. Rollins said that the moment she saw Ms. Robinson, he knew that if she took her time to track down the other people involved with her mother. Ms. Palmer interjected, saying which other people. The judge asked him which other people were involved. Mr. Rollins said he's not a name dropper.
Ms. Robinson, what was your reaction once you saw her?
Honestly, I looked at her and I already knew if she really took time out to pursue the other people that were involved with this.
One of the other people involved.
Mr. Rollins, who were the other people involved?
I'm not a name dropper.
Mr. Rollins said Ms. Palmer was having affairs with other people at the time because they were associates of his. Ms. Palmer said she only had sexual relationships with another man before Mr. Rollins. The other man had already been tested for his paternity, and he was not the father. That's why she's sure that Mr. Rollins is the father.
Who are you talking about? What do you know?
The thing is, I can't prove it right now.
Okay.
But the only thing I can do is verbally tell you.
Verbally stated.
That she had multiple parts. She was multitasking.
No, I was not. You probably were most tested. I know I would.
Ms. Robinson said her second encounter with Mr. Rollins was on Facebook. She sent him a friend request and invited him to her child's birthday party. Mr. Rollins came to the party with a home DNA test kit. The entire courtroom gasped. Mr. Rollins said Ms. Robinson asked him to bring it, but they ended up not going through with it.
So he was like, do you want to call me? So I was like, yeah. He gave me his number, called him. I told him, I said, well, my baby's birthday is tomorrow.
Tell me when this is happening.
I told October the 6th, 2015.
So you were about 22 around then?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins said that Ms. Robinson had congenital foot deformity. He said he researched it and found out that it was hereditary, and he doesn't have anything like that. He said Ms. Robinson had some physical resemblance to some of the other men Ms. Palmer was sleeping with, that the associate of his told him whenever he had sex with Ms. Palmer. Only the DNA results can settle this decades-long feud.
Mr. Rollins, you are not the father.
Well,
You are not the father.
Baby, I'm sorry.
Ms. Hicks drags a man, Mr. Smith, to the court that he is the father of her 3-year-old daughter. Mr. Smith denies being the father, that he has medical proof and a bombshell witness in the shape of Ms. Hicks's own sister to back up his claim. The sister was called into the courtroom to stand beside Mr. Smith.
Ms. Hicks, you say the sins of your past have brought you into court today to save your relationship. You are petitioning the court for a DNA test to prove that the defendant is the father of your 3-month-old daughter, Honesty. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hicks was asked how she felt hearing Mr. Smith denies paternity. She said she knows she has only slept with him, that it pains her to hear him deny this, and also hearing her blood sister testify in support breaks her heart. Her sister interrupted her that Ms. Hicks is a liar. She said she knows for a fact that Mr. Smith wasn't the only person her sister was sleeping with, that she's a serial cheater.
So, Ms. Hicks, how does it make you feel hearing Mr. Smith deny paternity?
I know I've only slept with him, and I know who my children belong to. Like, hearing this from him and him getting it from my own full-blooded sister, it just bores me.
Tell the truth.
It bores me.
Mr. Smith said he used to work out a lot. There was a time he strained himself too hard and he went to the hospital. The doctor told him that he won't be able to have kids. He submitted the medical proof to the court, showing that he had hypogonadism and was unable to have kids. Ms. Hicks said she wasn't aware till after the child was born, that the child was proof that Mr. Smith could still have kids.
I'd like to look at that. Male hypogonadism is a condition in which the body doesn't produce enough testosterone or has an impaired ability to produce sperm or both. This is what the doctor diagnosed you with?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Smith said that once the baby was born, that Ms. Hicks was cheating a lot with multiple men. He got all the information from the sister. The judge asked the sister why she was divulging information about Ms. Hicks' sexual partners to Mr. Smith. The sister said that Mr. Smith was a good man, and he deserved to know the truth.
She knows good and well that it's not your child.
Yes, Your Honor.
And why do you think she knows that? If you say you informed her about the fact that you couldn't have children?
Yes, Your Honor. I told her once her son was born, she was cheating a lot of time with multiple men.
You know that for certain?
Yes, Your Honor.
How do you know that? Explain.
Her sister used to tell me that she used to sleep with this guy and that guy, and I didn't believe her at first.
Ms. Hicks said she was in a committed relationship with Mr. Smith, but her sister was spreading lies to disrupt her relationship. Mr. Smith submitted text message evidence to the court showing Ms. Hicks having sexual talks with other men.
It's causing problems, Your Honor. It really is.
She believes her own lies, okay? They come true in her head. I don't know
And
why
once
she do
again,
this,
I
okay?
guess you're there with me while I'm sleeping with these
Of
men.
course.
We having a wang dang, ain't it?
Yep, child wills. I be right there.
We threesoming now.
The sister said that Ms. Hicks had a man over at Mr. Smith's grandmother's house, and they spent 2 days there. Mr. Smith nodded in agreement. Ms. Hicks denied the allegations that she didn't have another man over there, that she knows who the father of her kids are, that she always knows the men that she's with at every given time.
She was definitely sleeping around.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hicks, I have to ask you, did something similar to this come through your phone?
I don't even remember that text message, Your Honor. I honestly do not remember
I bet
this
you don't
text
even remember
message.
Your Honor, I bet you don't even remember when he went to his grandma's house because they got into it.
Mr. Smith said he has personally seen Ms. Hicks with other men. He said he saw a man jumping out from the windows after he was outside knocking on his door for over 30 minutes. The sister was echoing everything Mr. Smith was saying in agreement. The sister said he saw the man running across the field. Ms. Hicks said nobody jumped out from the window, that they're both lying.
Well, I came out the car. I seen somebody jump out the window, and I'm knocking on the door for like 30 minutes.
But a guy just jumped out the window, but you gotta knock on your own door.
Exactly.
Pitiful.
And so wait, were you there when the guy jumped out the window?
Oh,
Ms.
yes,
Hicks?
ma'am. I was in my car. I'm looking at him run through the field.
Ms. Hicks said Mr. Smith was happy when he found she was pregnant. Mr. Smith said he was faking the emotions. Ms. Hicks said he was lying that he was genuinely happy. Mr. Smith said because of his conditions, he had never had any kids before. A doctor was summoned to the courtroom to shed more light on the issue.
Were you happy about it?
Faking it to her, but I know in my mind that
Faking it.
I can't have.
Oh, you were faking it to her?
Yes, Your Honor.
It is no way anybody can fake anything. I mean, at the hospital, you're there. He was like, oh, she looked just like me. She's so beautiful.
The doctor explained in detail about the conditions, that it differs in certain individuals, and that some individuals can still have kids. Ms. Hicks said Mr. Smith carried the child around showing everyone, and he was proud of her. Mr. Smith said he was doing it simply because he likes the kid. He raised her. Only the DNA result can settle the tension between the couples and siblings.
Mr. Smith, you are the father. What next?
Mr. Walker, a disgruntled father, drags his ex-girlfriend, Ms. Devost, to Judge Lauren's court to prove that he is the father of their 13-month-old son. Ms. Devost said she had Mr. Walker believed he was the father after signing the birth certificate. Mr. Walker hasn't seen his son for 6 months now.
Mr. Walker, you claim the defendant led you to believe you fathered her son, Kamani, for an entire year, but just 6 months ago told you you are not father and refuses to let you see him. You are here to prove that Kamani is your biological son. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Devost said she regretted having Mr. Walker sign the birth certificate. She said she's sure he's not the father of her son, and that's why he hasn't seen her child in over 6 months. She wants to rectify the issue and remove his name from the birth certificate. Mr. Walker said he was there the whole way, from the pregnancy to the birth.
I regret letting him sign the birth certificate, and I just feel I feel bad because I let him do it, but I just wanted to get the truth out today and just figure out he's not the father so I can get him off the birth certificate.
Ms. Devost said they met at a foster care home. They lost contact for a while before reuniting. They were not in a committed relationship, but they were intimate. Mr. Walker said when Ms. Devost was pregnant, she told him he was the father. He was happy.
How'd you all even meet?
We met when we was in foster care. We was like this group home setting for like older youth to live on their own independently.
Ms. Devost said when she was pregnant, she told Mr. Walker that he was the father, but she was also with another man at the same time. The whole courtroom gasped. Mr. Walker said when he found out about the pregnancy, he started preparing himself mentally. He had 2 jobs at the time. He started getting himself ready to be a father.
But at the time, I thought he was the father. He was the one I was with when the doctor actually, when I took the pregnancy test and then I got it confirmed by the doctor, he was the person I was with at the time.
Mr. Walker said he was excited to be a father since he never had one growing up. He was there all the way for Ms. Devost and the child. He submitted the birth certificate to the court. The judge asked Ms. Devost why she didn't share her doubts about the paternity to Mr. Walker during this time. She said she was scared. The tears started flowing.
I actually have the birth certificate that I signed when he was first born.
I'd like to see that. Jerome, will you hand me Mr. Walker's evidence, please? And so you were there.
Yes,
She
Your
told you it was your child and you lived up to what you were supposed to do. This is the birth certificate for Kamani Dominique Devost Walker.
Ms. Devost said she couldn't work at the time during the pregnancy, and Mr. Walker really stepped up and was taking care of them and working 2 jobs. She said she couldn't bring herself to tell him about the other man. She said told the other man about the pregnancy, but he was in another city. But Mr. Walker was in the same city with her. It was convenient for her to have Mr. Walker as the father.
He been there the whole pregnancy. He was there, so I'm like, it's too late, it felt.
And so like we have seen over and over and over again, when you tell a lie, you just have to keep telling more lies.
Right.
Mr. Walker said she had no idea then, but Ms. Devost's friends and family members told him he might not be the biological father. Mr. Walker submitted evidence to the court showing Ms. Devost texting him during an argument that he's not the father.
May not be Kamani's biological father. When did she finally tell you that?
It was probably maybe around June.
It was May.
May, June, around one of those times. I believe we were arguing, and I also have some text messages to showing
You have
that-
more evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Jerome, can you
Your
please
Honor.
hand me the evidence? And so,
Ms. Devost didn't want to take accountability for swindling Mr. Walker for as long as she did before tossing him away. She said Mr. Walker always had the option to walk, but he decided to stay on his own volition, that there was no obligation on him. Judge Lauren had to step in and scold Ms. Devost. The whole courtroom clapped in unison.
because see, I'm not gonna let you go back too far from center. Now, you can come in here and tell the truth and say you made a mistake and you lied and you did something for your benefit and you were scared and you didn't want to be by yourself. But what you're not gonna do is sit up here and convince me that, oh, he could have left. Why? He could have left a baby that he thought was his biological child. He could have repeated a cycle that has affected him.
Ms. Devost said his child talks with the other man on video calls, that he calls the other man daddy. Mr. Walker said he was not aware of this. Mr. Walker said he has prepared himself for the outcome of the tests, that he is ready to let her and the child go. Only the DNA results can put Mr. Walker out of his misery now.
Mr. Walker, you are not the father.
Ms. Shands brings her high school sweetheart, Mr. Hollis, to court in case of paternity denial. Mr. Hollis is in court with his mother, and they both believe that Ms. Shands is lying about the paternity of her 2-year-old son. He says he is not the father.
Miss Shands, you appear in court today because you are devastated that your first love and the person you lost your virginity to is now denying your 15-month-old son, Aiden. You say once you prove to the defendant that he is the father, you hope you two can finally be a family. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Shands says she has only ever been with one man all her life, and that man is Mr. Hollis. He was her first love, first kiss, and first everything. She wants to prove he is the father of her son. Mr. Hollis disagrees, saying that he has seen Ms. Shands cheating with other people before, even to the extent of dating his close friend.
He has been in my baby life ever since my baby has been 3 months. He's my first love, my first kiss, my first everything. And today I just want to know the truth about, I want to prove to him that he is the father of my child.
And so, Mr. Hollis, tell the court why you say she's a pathological liar.
I caught Desire cheating so many times, like, it don't make no sense.
Ms. Shands said both of them had made the same mistakes of sleeping with each other's best friend before. Mr. Hollis's mother interjected, saying that was not how it happened. Their voices were clashing at this point. Judge Lauren had to calm them down.
Was close friends once before.
They was, but they
used to come back and tell me that Mr. Amir, he was messing with one of my friends.
I don't know.
We both were young at the time. We both were young. So
both y'all young now?
Yeah, we still are young. We still are young. But
the story from both parties was not coherent. Judge Lauren said, "This is exactly why teenagers should just stick to learning and playing sports." The whole courtroom clapped. Ms. Shands said she had revenge sex with one of Mr. Hollis's friends, and she didn't use protection.
My best friend, let's go to the store. I told him, what they do that at? I said, he your best friend, he her best friend too.
Like, I knew about the whole best friend thing, but like, now that they done slept around on me, like, I don't know, like, they probably were doing it then.
They was.
Like, back when they were best friends.
I believe they was.
No.
I believe they was. I told him they was.
Ms. Shands said she had sex multiple times with Mr. Hollis's friend, but she was not with Mr. Hollis at the time. She said she found out she was pregnant after 5 months. She said she was sleeping with both boys at the time.
If she was going with my friend, she was still sneaking around with me anyway because I felt like he did it to me, so y'all together, I'm finna go and do what I gotta do.
yeah, okay, yeah, that did happen as well.
So you were sleeping with both boys at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You find out you're pregnant. You tell the other guy first. What was his response?
Well, he was happy. He was happy.
Ms. Shands said the other friend was the one with her during labor and childbirth. Mr. Hollis said he didn't know she was in labor, so he wasn't there. The judge asked Ms. Shands that if the other friend was the one present at the childbirth, why was she now insisting that Mr. Hollis is the father of her child? Ms. Shands said it's because her child bore more physical resemblance to Mr. Hollis than the other guy.
The friend was with me when Aiden was born.
In the hospital?
In the hospital. In labor.
In labor.
And my mom, I sent my mom there because I knew there was a possibility that my son could be the dad as well. He favored my son when he was born.
So wait, and so Mr. Hollis, you just didn't want to be there, or you felt like you weren't invited?
I wasn't never invited. Like, anything I found out about the baby, I found out about myself, like.
Mr. Hollis's mom said she FaceTimed Ms. Shands and told her that the child looked like her son. Ms. Shands agreed that there was a possibility. Ms. Shands said she didn't tell the other friend about it.
With the friend?
Yes.
No, I never even talked to him about it.
So to this day, the other person doesn't know that Mr. Hollis could be Aiden's biological father?
He hears it off the streets because everybody on the streets
They
tell
talking
him that
about
the baby look like Aiden, the baby look like Amir,
think
the
he
baby look
is.
like Amir.
He think he is child.
Ms. Shands said Mr. Hollis released a derogatory song about her and the other friend, and she was hurt. The lyrics of the song were displayed in the courtroom, and the content was read aloud. The whole courtroom gasped. The judge said both parties deserved to be in detention, not paternity court.
Your Honor, first of all, that was after the fact that she made a video about me first while I was at school. So
No,
Made a video?
They've been making videos about
No.
each other.
after she made one of me first.
no.
This is insane. I mean, really, I'm sitting here, I feel like you two need to be going to detention, not to paternity court.
Ms. Shands said the child had a better bond with Mr. Hollis than the other friend. The mother said she loved the kid, and she wants to get this over with for the sake of his son. Ms. Shands said she wants to be with Mr. Hollis and raise the child with him. Only the DNA results can put an end to this teenage love affair gone wrong.
Mr. Hollis, you are not the father.